IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey. Do you often dream about leading a more creative life? Whether you wanted to be a painter, a dancer, a cricketer, or a photographer. Maybe you wanted to play games for a living. Growing up, financial responsibilities often take us away from our true passions. Now imagine if you could explore that creativity while still making sure that your family is financially secure. Find a way for the artist and the realist within us to coexist. करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे. SBI Life अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए. To know more about our insurance plans with wealth creation, log on to www.sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
This is Storytellers and Story Sellers live on tape. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar on the IVM Podcast Network. Now, every episode on this podcast, you will hear me talk to people who work in entertainment, creating stories or selling stories. That's why we call it Storytellers and Story Sellers. When I was thinking of getting my guests on for today's episode, I asked Shweta, who's one of my guests here, about featuring on this episode, and I said, hey, I do a business of entertainment podcast. And she's like, but what I do isn't entertainment. And I was like, no, wait, what you do is entertainment, because toys of all kind are entertainment, even if they're sex toys. Yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking to Tanisha, Ashish and Shweta, who run the Sangya Project. It is an online store. It has now become actually an online store that retails sexual entertainment, but they've got a very interesting brand that also delves into sexual wellness. It's a very fertile space right now in India. We were talking about this a little while earlier, and the 2020s feel like the 60s with the Wi-Fi on. And whenever you're talking about the 60s, sexual liberation and awakening and conversation about a freer, more informed sex life is very important. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Please give a warm Storytellers welcome to Ashish, Tanisha and Shweta from the Sangya Project on Storytellers and Story Sellers. Folks, great to have you on this show.
Great to be here.
Great to be here.
Amazing. Let me get this started by talking about what I said a little while ago, right? If you're on Instagram today and if you have interests as weird as me, you will find yourself being advertised to by a slew of brands that are retailing products, right from massagers to games to stuff that's really meant to spice up your sex life. Right now, most brands that are in this space are looking to be titillating, interesting, strange, and making all of that and packaging all of that in a sort of urban veneer, whereas Sangya has a very different brand identity, right? When I started researching on Sangya, and I realized that you started as an Instagram page, right, that talked about normalizing conversations around people's sexual experiences. I want Tanisha to maybe start us off with how that really came about, that expression that Sangya is. Before we talk about your business and how you do operations and how we do legalities, how did this space really mature as an idea in your head? How did you really put it out there?
I'm going to have to jump back like 7 years to start with where this really began. I used to work in wildlife conservation, and my area was supposed to be academic and the academic section in general. And the more time I spent in academia, the more I realized that the space is just about select groups of people talking for everyone else and deciding that they had the data that was relevant and they had decided what the norm was for human behavior or animal behavior or what have it. And that was just very unsettling to sit with. And the longer I stayed in the wildlife conservation space or academia in general, the more it felt like there was a dearth for a variety of voices and for having people speak for themselves. And I'm also a queer person, so sexual health and mental health is something that's constantly playing in the back of my mind. So it feels like those three subjects just kind of converged, and I was like, I don't understand why some people talk about sex to other people as if some of us have figured it out and the rest are just sort of, lost in the, floating. And yeah, I pitched it to Ashish and Shweta, and they said, yes, absolutely. More of us need to take up space and tell our own stories and not just be spoken for.
I love it. I think the fact that this is a queer founded sexual products company is a very interesting, very wholesome differentiator, right? I know that there is a story involving an escalator and Ashish, take it away.
Yeah, so well, the escalator part came a little later when we really wanted to figure out how we can monetize Sangya Project, because at the end of it, we were paying people for their emotional labor and time to write for Sangya, because we wanted lived experiences to come on the Instagram page and not just our voices telling people how it is, right? We wanted people to share stories so that they don't feel that alone, right? As a queer person myself, understanding that I'm queer in my 30s was a turbulent experience, right? And it's only because I didn't know that these kind of stories could be there. And once I figured out, okay, I'm going to run out of money paying everyone as well, I need to figure out how I can monetize this Instagram page. And Tanish and I were window shopping in a mall, and we were literally, all we were doing were going up and down escalators trying to figure out how we're going to monetize Sangya Project. And we were looking at, I think it was La Senza.
Yeah.
And we were like, why can't we just give people the tools to feel their sexuality in the way and pleasure the way they would want to feel confident in the lingerie that this mannequin is wearing, right? So we realized that if I had the tools to figure out what my pleasure points were, it would be easier to do that. And luckily, I'm privileged enough to come from a family which is, import-export wali family. And
Right.
and I knew the tricks of the trade. I had the right contacts, and we decided, okay, let's try and see how this works. Let's monetize this. And on the escalator is where Sangya Project was actually born
Wow,
as a business.
That's both very personal and very interesting, because looking at the real world, I mean, and I say real world as opposed to Instagram, because Instagram is not the real world. Well, it is, but it's not. Looking at the real world for inspiration is very interesting, right? Because whether it's intimate wear, whether it's how people express what they put on their body, it's your sexual preferences and the tools that go with your sexual pleasure are also just an expression and an extension of that intimacy. So that's very interesting, right? And I find it like a very clever, backstory, to be honest, right? It shows that, hey, we are queer entrepreneurs, but we are entrepreneurs. We're looking at where business is happening, right? This is the evolution of our passion project into a business needs real world business input, and that's very interesting. Let me ask you this: when you started Sangya, and this is pre-business, right? It's almost, and I followed the page for a while. It's almost like a support group.
Correct.
Right? I think that's the link that holds everyone who follows the page together. And was there a sort of moral dilemma in there as well on turning what was essentially a safe space into a business? Was there? I mean, again, I'm just asking you this because there are very different objectives behind both of these, right? While they might be joined at the hip, was that something that you had to work past?
Not really, because the other option was a paywall. Now that, according to me, was a moral dilemma, right? If I'm asking people to pay for the content, what I'm asking other people is, hey, the people who are privileged enough to buy sex toys, buy from us so that we can keep sharing these stories. So there's no moral dilemma over there, because we were not coaxing people saying that you're only going to get these articles if you buy our sex toys, and we've never advertised it like that. Right. We want to expand into more spaces, and that's how we're doing it through the business, while also hoping that this business turns into something that all of us can put 100% energy into, rather than have day jobs and then do Sangya on the slide and not give it the time and energy that it really needs. So that moral dilemma went away when we said, hey, do we want to put a paywall up for this on a website? And we said, absolutely not. So we keep an article, and then you'll see a post about, hey, if you want to buy a sex toy, and you'll never see an article which has a plug for the toys. The article is a separate entity, so when it gets shared, right, there's no plug about toys in there at all.
Right.
Ads that we make on Instagram, in the sense ke the post about the product, it's just information about the product with the price, and that's all we do, right? We spend zero money on advertising. We've never pushed an ad. We've never made an ad. We create ads on posts, which are like ads, but we've never put any media buying behind it.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll change though. I'm just saying.
Well, to be honest, I hope not. I think it's something that we can do with earned media really, really well, and bringing more voices in. But hopefully we don't try to push things in people's faces, because we also do understand that sexuality is something that we need consent for in a lot of ways. And advertising bypasses that.
Right.
And if my parents or whoever, right, even though they're fully supporting and part of Sangya, just them scrolling through puppies and cakes and suddenly seeing a vibrator there, it doesn't feel right, according to me. So having something like Sangya, which is growing organically, and the posts and toys reach you organically through earned media, through PR, or whichever way you want to do it. Influencers, which always talk about the pockets where people have similar interests with, right? Whether it's sex health influencers, whether it's people who openly talk about it, artists who talk about sexuality and taking the products and website through them, I think is a better aspect than I opening an app like a food darzi app or something and suddenly seeing a Google ad pop up or something like that, right? Which happened to me today, which doesn't seem like something that Sangya would want to do.
It's a very interesting social engineering goal that you've put in there, and I find that fascinating. I'm going to bring Shweta in, and before I do that, let me ask. Because I'm going to ask you such a dhakyanusi question. Shweta and I went to the same school, right? We're both from Nagpur, and what do your parents say? Right? What do your parents say? I also know that you're Sindhi, so maybe there's like a business mind happening there behind somewhere. I'm full on stereotyping at this point. But what do your parents say?
I mean, my parents have only sort of told them that, I've told them about the ancillary products first, which is at this point the lubricant and the perfumes. And with respect to the toys, I've really only said, massagers.
Right.
The rest of the people in the family sort of know. Like my sisters-in-law know, and I just keep asking her if she wants me to get her anything, and she just sort of giggles and says no. But the parents at this point only know of massagers, and they make of it what they will. But my mother has recently made an Insta account and has sent me a follow request, so it's only a matter of time before we have a conversation about it. Yeah. But yeah, the rest everyone knows.
Love it. What about you guys? I mean, I'm sure you said what you do as a business with your folks, and I'm only asking this not as a ye log kya karte hain, but as a very real
Desi family.
Yeah, Desi family
survival.
Thing, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Social survival, whether it's, your family is family at the end of the day, right?
And sex is taboo in India.
And sex is taboo in India, right? Your parents didn't have sex. I mean, come on. Yeah. Right? But what do your parents say?
Well, this is going to be something
which is hilarious.
Which is
this
actually
is a
opposite.
story.
The sex toy thing was actually my dad's idea.
Really?
In the sense that a few years, like I think it was 10 years ago, is when he went to Hong Kong. He's basically an import. He was an import-export at that time.
Right.
And he saw this stall in one of the expos, which was always filled up. And he never could go there, right? And you're an Indian guy alone in Hong Kong, so you try to figure out what you want to do. And when he got a chance to go to that stall, he realized it was a sex toy stall. Right? And it was packaged and shown in a way which was aesthetic enough at that time. So he bought a bunch of samples and he came to India and he said, like, this is something I'm going to do in India.
Right.
But the times were very, very different then. People didn't really pick it up. There's no internet as such where influencers talk about, or he didn't know how to set up a website. He wanted to sell it on a teleshopping network.
Right.
And that didn't fly well. For a while, they did sell breast massagers. Right. I don't know how they're using the breast massagers, but it was sold as breast massagers.
Sure. Okay.
But the problem...
Like, are they just hands?
No, you wear it. Yeah. They are basically curved stuff which you can put in the bras and everything. Yeah, but problem occurred with that when some distributor in India advertised it as, it could potentially cure breast cancer. And that's when the government shut it down. Cut 2 years later, this is where the escalator story, right? So, and my parents are like they help me with packaging, they help me with figuring out where to get manufacturers and stuff like that. So when I say Sangya, it's them as well. They're part of the team.
Right.
So for me, it's a very different story.
I love it.
Clearly, Ashish grew up with dildos around. At least for a short period of his life.
Yes, I did.
He was like, yes, this is what I want in life.
I want to double click on that for a second, and then I'll bring Tanisha in. How was that conversation with your dad?
About sex toys?
Yeah, about when you said, or when Tanisha said, "Hey, look, we need to monetize. This is what the business is going to be." Was he like, "Mera beta mere sapne pura kar raha hai"? Like, what is the scene?
So basically, he did the most Punjabi business mind thing he can. He's like, I know a guy. I was like, okay, can you give me the contact? He's like, sab kar dega. Don't worry. Call him, message him. He'll give you all the range that you need. And whatever you need for that. I was just like, okay, Dad, whatever you say. He's like, don't worry, you'll be fine. I was like, okay. Once I had his support and I had his ideas, we used to brainstorm together. We still do, right? I'm sure my phone is buzzing right now because he gets really excited with the ideas we're doing. He's talking about 2023 and what Sangya can do then.
He's an excited bunny.
Yeah. So when I say Sangya, it wouldn't be as successful as it is without him.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
for sure.
That's wonderful. Tanisha, you want to hear your parents' story?
I think my mother's still processing. She's just been processing for the last year. My father's takeaway from this conversation was, "तू sex नहीं कर रही है ना, दूसरों से करा रही है ना, चल, I'll take it." So I think that's how they've just made peace with the conversation. That it's other people doing it. My child is just monetizing this. Great.
Love it. Beautiful. तुम नहीं लड़ रहे हो ना, तुम Okay, let me ask you guys this, right? And I mean, I want to save the explosive legalities conversation for a bit, but how did you do this? I'm guessing all three of you are first time entrepreneurs, if
I am
Not Ashish, yeah.
I'm not.
Right.
I'm a
But the two of us are.
115th entrepreneur, to be honest. Like my family has always been in business or the film industry. So I grew up in around sets and import exporting.
Right.
So it's two worlds that have come. So I've started production companies. I tried selling before phones came properly in India. We were selling Chinese mobile phones,
Right.
Toasters, aquaguards. We were manufacturing aquaguards and selling aquaguards. So it's been a whole list of businesses that I've done, which has, out of each failure and a little bit of success, I've learned what we can do with Sangya.
Ashish, in fact, would offer other people to do their homework for money when
That
he
was
in
when I
school.
was at school. Yeah.
That's when it really started. Not with the
Cool
aquaguard.
Yeah.
Cool man, literally. That's what I was trying to get at.
So I couldn't. We didn't have printers at that time, so I used to handwrite my own visiting cards and stuff like that.
Hustler.
But
Yeah.
all of that is a very different universe
Yeah.
than sex. So here's what my question really is, right? When you decided to start this business, right? I'm sure there were many challenges. I'm sure there was a bunch of trepidation for you
Yes.
as well. Ki, hey, are we really doing this,
Correct.
etc. But once you're past the psychological impact of your own decision making, you have to actually get out and do things, right? How did that go up? I mean, you said your dad was like, I know a guy, but I'm sure it was more than that. Right?
Absolutely,
It's a lot more than that.
It was a lot more than that.
There's a lot of taboo that you deal with, even in terms of getting small things off the road. Like, for example, just packaging, right? You go to them, you sort of start talking about it. You tell them what it's for, and there's a sudden apprehension. Suddenly they're like, "Oh, maybe we don't want to do this," and that's a constant. It's difficult to get things done. It's difficult to get things made locally because there is such apprehension around sex and sex-related products that they don't want to touch it because they think it'll mess up their reputation.
Right.
So that is, I mean, and that's not something that we, and I'm sure we're in a bubble here, but that's not something that we thought would happen. I knew there would be hurdles, all of us did, but this is not something that we computed.
Right.
And that's an ongoing thing for sure.
Right. Because from whatever research that I've done on this, and whatever lived experience that I've had walking around Fountain in Colaba, sex toys or massages are just kept there, right? And that's
Yes.
the exposure we
Yes.
have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is no organized marketing.
Yeah.
There isn't ergonomics. You're not talking about a user experience. I mean,
Yeah.
we're a far cry from, what's it, Love Ends? Is that what it's called? Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So a far cry from app-operated
Yeah.
dildos at this point, right? So
Yeah.
I want you to walk me through early days, right, when you were setting up manufacturing and you're doing private label stuff as well, right?
Yes.
You're making your own
Yes.
Yeah.
your own toys. You're collaborating with other brands who are in the sexual wellness and sexual wellness space. Talk me through those early days, right? I mean, does a conversation stick out where, I mean, how did you teach yourself how to pitch this to people, right? I mean, it feels like such a alien concept, really, to take out into the market in India.
It is.
To me, it was honestly, it was organic, wasn't it? I like.
I mean, you're a natural, we've established.
No, but even when it comes to conversation, I don't think a conversation stood out till we went to the packaging part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? That, what we're doing is a taboo thing, because we started, if you noticed in the post, if you do have the time to scroll through, whoever's listening, that we started with sex toy reviews. And once we went to the sex toy reviews and people were like, "Arey, ye milega ka? Where will we get this
Yeah.
particular thing?" And I was like, "We can give it to you." And that's how it started, right? And so it was such a natural conversation going through till we didn't want to do our own packaging, till we didn't want to do go out of the, because this is a COVID baby at the end of it, right?
Right.
Till we didn't step out to figure out, okay, I need to package this. I need people to, I need to label this. I need to tell people what I'm doing as such. And they saw the because nobody actually said it, right, at the end of it. Saw the apprehension that they had for doing it. And that's where you're like, oh shit, okay, we're in our own Instagram bubble as such. But while the early days were on, we were gung-ho, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is how we are. And luckily, we're privileged enough to be ourselves on Instagram. Like my bio says I'm bi and poly, right? People have done articles on Tanisha before about their life and queer experiences, and so we've always been out and proud. And when we're living our truth and trying to live our truth with it, I think we forget that the world has not caught up yet.
Right.
No, but also I'm not sure you got that entirely right. Do you remember the first month, the first batch that we sold, and the whole payment gateway fiasco that happened?
Yeah, the payment. That's what I said, right? Because the packaging came before the payment gateway fiasco.
So
Yeah.
this was the first lot. Firstly, we were so cute because we ordered like such a tiny little batch, and we patted ourselves on the back thinking that, oh yeah, this is gonna last a few weeks. We're good.
There were hundreds of goods.
We-
There wasn't a tiny batch.
Yeah, it really
No.
was not.
In hindsight, it was really a tiny batch.
Yeah.
We went out of stock in a day and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a madness. Like
Wow.
the Shopify button, the sound just kept ringing, and we were just looking at each other. We were just like, what is happening? Is this really happening? Anyway, so this was all after we had set up a payment gateway, right? So we're expecting that. Now we're sold out. So there's a considerable amount of money that's coming. So we're assuming that, yes, they're going to clear it in a couple of days. Turns out they didn't really do their KYC properly. And then they realized what the business is about. And then they said, oh, we can't really work this payment gateway and everything is now suspended. I'm like, buddy, why did you make it go live if you were not sure of what we're doing? Like, we submitted the forms. We did a dummy transaction, obviously.
Right.
And all of it went through. And this was only after like a couple of days that they told us that. So then we had to spend a considerable amount of time trying to explain to these people what it was, how they need to release our monies. It was absolutely anxiety ridden because we just started our business, right? Imagine the very first week you start your business, you have to refund everyone. We were pretty sure that that's what it would be,
Right.
till the time someone from that company actually came up and said that, yeah, fine, I'll help you. And then he sorted it out. But to give you perspective, to get that payment gateway sorted took us 7 months. It got sorted in Jan this year because nobody wanted to do this business.
But then the thing is, on the other end of that spectrum, we've also spoken to manufacturers or people who are just generally working with product design, other kinds of products. I'm just going to be vague about that. But a lot of people in this space know exactly what we're talking about just when we mention what ingredients we're looking at or what materials we're looking at. And the second they realize what kind of business we're doing, there's this hushed tone of, can I actually show you what I'm capable of? We've had manufacturers quietly show us menstrual cups
Yeah.
and say, this is what we're capable of. We've been doing this for years. We just do not know how to bring this to the market because there is so much resistance.
That's fantastic.
And that's devastating, right? Because there's so many people with ideas and they have the tools. They've set up entire factories that can handle this industry, and they just don't know how to take it off, and they don't have the right people around them to discuss this. So the second we came in with our gung-ho energy, they were just like, ab baitho, suno, dekho hame. Like, they just lined up menstrual cups in front of us and said, we have this, we can do this.
That's amazing, right? Both those things that you said, right? When Shweta said, you stock out in a day and a half, or when Tanisha, you said about people just being excited about the possibilities and wanting to show
Yeah.
you what they're capable of. What that points to really is both supply and demand.
Correct.
Absolutely.
It-
It is so untapped. It is so untapped. And it's not as if people don't want it.
Right.
Nobody knows how to do it because, taboo.
Yeah.
Like even some of the stuff that we do get manufactured over here, they're apprehensive about people finding out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're making money out of it.
Sure.
And they're happy doing it. And, they do it with pride, but there is apprehension that this would get out. So that's something they struggle with.
They're wondering what their parents will say. Look, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back and we're going to continue this conversation with the co-founders of the Sangya Project. Don't go anywhere. We're having a conversation about sex toys. What else do you have to do? Come back right after these messages.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
And we're back. This is Storytellers and Storysellers. I'm Vineet Kanabar. We're talking to Shweta, Tanisha, and Ashish from the Sangya Project. Before the break, we were talking about the early days of Sangya and the market realizations that our guests had when they were starting this business out. I want to double click on that a little bit and ask you, what are some of the most surprising consumer truths you've come about, right? Like, is there, I'm sure you went in with sort of preconceived notions, right? Okay, these are the kind of products that people might have seen, and these are the kind of products that there'll be demand for. But have there been products that have really surprised you about how they flew off the shelf? And have you had some surprising, interesting revelations about the sexual psyche of the Indian consumer?
I think one of the first things I noticed and was very excited about was how many people were keen to use remote controlled products.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people in my head I thought would be shopping for themselves and would just want an individually operated product. But with the demand we saw for people saying, no, I want remote control so I can be anywhere in the house while my partner uses it, I thought that was really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been a very, very strange time, I think. People seem very curious but also very confident about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a lot of online research happening while they wait to find the actual tools to make that happen and figure themselves out more confidently. But we've gotten a mixed bag. We've got people come to us with very specific questions saying this is the level of experience I've had with toys or none at all. And this is what I'm looking for. Do you have something that will make it happen? But we also have people who are coming up to us and saying, hey, I never considered this before, but pandemic has recontextualized things. I'm rethinking a lot of things about my life. Don't want to miss out on any more time and I really want to answer these questions. So how can I make this happen? I think people are just asking a lot of very, very, very interesting questions about themselves. And that's nice to see that we're not just, on autopilot and letting life happen to us. We're sitting down and saying, no, I want to know myself better. That's been really cool.
Love it.
People are excited, right? Because what we're trying to do is also make it accessible and affordable. So suddenly people are seeing toys that they don't have to tell their friends when they're going to Amsterdam or they're going to any other country, pick up and put in the bag for them without even realizing. But unfortunately, because we do get sold out, the weirdest moments I've had is when people have bought the sex toy, have no idea what it does, and then message us, hey, I bought this, I'm really excited, but what does it do exactly?
Right.
So I was just like, but you bought it. I don't understand. And obviously, I do guide them through it. And
read the damn manual, my friend. What?
So, and I think that's also kind of on us because we don't want to put up the manuals anyway to be part of the whole discrete thing. We have put it up on our website. Sometimes people miss it, obviously, because they're excited and everybody has a life. But it's been cute and so overwhelming because of the innocence, but curiosity and love that they're messaging us with. People are so excited to explore more of themselves or with their partners. And that being part of that journey is just so much fun. Right? Because what you're doing is just bringing people joy at the end of it and nothing else.
Right.
Except for when you run out and then people get really angry and make angry comments.
And
I mean,
yeah.
Sangya made us realize that it's entirely possible to have dildo emergencies.
I'm making notes.
Right, because sometimes we don't reply immediately, right? Because obviously we are very few of us part of the team. So we're not the volume, and I think people don't realize that the Sangya project has been active only for 9 months now,
Right.
as a business.
Right.
Now, if we're active only for 9 months, but the demand is such that we sell out of products, and every time because we're growing bigger, just our reach is growing bigger, we still are ordering more toys than we do the next batch, but they still get over. Like it's March 15th now, our first batch, our last batch came in Feb. And we were sold out within by the first week of March. So I'm like, okay, now what I thought in Jan would last me 1 month is not lasting me 1 month. So I have to now think about what will last me a month going forward, by the time still growing.
Right.
So we will never, I feel like sometimes we won't catch up, but people need to also understand that it's been only 9 months. So it's not always possible to get to the dildo emergencies, but we will get there.
King Santas to the rescue.
Yes.
I think that's-
I love that. I love it.
there's so much to unpack here. Right? There's just so much to unpack. Right? And I'm going to unpack some of it myself, and then I'm going to bring you in. Right? Man, it must be a nightmare to forecast.
Yeah.
Business planning principles are just like,
Yeah.
pata nahi.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, yes.
And a lot of it happens with a lot of trial and error. Like, for example, the products we released 4 months ago, and what we do, and this is again learning from past experiences that I have had personally, is that letting go of products. Right. There are some products that you probably saw on a website that don't exist anymore.
Right.
Not because it's a bad product, just didn't work. In the sense, this is not what people were wanting. Right. I'm not going to force feed that down people's throats.
Sure.
Just to make a sale. So I have boxes in the warehouse sitting there sometimes. Right. I'm not going to sell that. I'm going to either dispose of it nicely, environmentally safe way, or whichever way, but I won't force that down someone's throat, and I'll take it as a loss or hit to the business. So we keep changing products. And then the products, if we know work, like there's the Sangya 8, 39, and the 10, they work really well. I'm going to continue that. Right. There are some products that I know right now probably won't work, and we're coming up with a new range, learning from that.
Right.
So making sure that we are dynamic and taking into consideration that there will be hits and misses.
Sure.
Part of the forecast that we're doing right now is really, really important. But yes, it's like, feel like Doctor Strange and the multiverse of madness right now, because we don't know which exact universe we're going to go with in this next 2 years, when the past 9 months have been so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to do a forecast when you haven't reached a point of stability where you can say that, yes, 100 is good for a week. When you're still figuring out whether it's 100 or 120 or 150.
Right.
So, that sort of a thing.
That's very interesting.
It's a good problem to have.
It is. It totally is. The bad problem to have is not being able to name your product what it is.
Yes.
Is it though? Is it? Let me get to that.
So,
So we started out, again, Instagram, right? And because this was us transitioning from our very personal social media handles to having a page, I feel like a lot of the audience we brought were the younger ones. A lot of people were in the pandemic, living with families, living with other people, just didn't have privacy. So every third message that we got when we said we had products was just discretion, privacy. What will the label say? And that's when Ashish's brain jumped to the rescue and said, hey, maybe we don't name them at all. What if we just give them numbers?
Right.
And so we thought about what words would go first, because we really tried to, be funny or poetic or really quirky about it, and nothing sat right. And then we saw that other people are already trying that, right? That's a struggle other people already have, trying to find the right word for it. So then we just said, you know what, fuck it. We're doing numbers. We're going to give numbers so that when you get the product and the label arrives at your place, it just says a number. And then if you want to say that's a USB disc or a charger or a Kindle, that's entirely up to you. You play the game how you want to. We play no role in steering that story for you.
but let me contextualize why I said it's a problem, right? I mean, while it seems like what you're running is a curated service in that sense, right? As a business, when you're trying to scale, you want awareness, you want, instant recognition, right? Vibrator, Sangya. That's what you want. Hotel Trivago. that's what you want. That's where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
That's the holy grail of business. For me, music, Spotify music, finish. End of story, right? That's the barrier, is what I'm saying. But I completely get you, right? It's a very nuanced issue. It's not something that but of course, because we live in a country where you go non-veg shopping and it has to be in a black bag. Now, everyone knows what's in the black bag, but it still has to be a black bag. It can't be a transparent bag. So, of course, those nuances, the social conditions in which you are making your business transaction, which you have all the rights to do, they are mundane and it's very weird, right? That's completely understandable. What is a bigger problem, right? While personal consumption is one thing, the bigger problem is that while there is clearly demand and supply, there is clearly a role for it for sexual entertainment. I'm just going to use a catch-all like that, to play in people's lives, in delivering happiness, in making sure we are less repressed than how we've been so far. It completely shuts down an entire business case, right? Unless you're enterprising fellows like you, or people who are brazen enough to just be like, oh, hey, here, vibrator on the streets of Fountain. There is no middle space. There is no space for conversation that it allows, right? I think that's where it makes me a little wary, right? And I'd love to bring Shweta in here because, hey, only one of us here has a legal degree. Maybe.
Yeah.
What does the law say?
The law, my God. It's actually extremely... they say it's vague, but to me, it's actually really clear. So the law that everyone falls back on to say that it's not legal is your Section 292 of IPC, which is obscenity. Now, the section really only talks about, if you read the whole section, predominantly talks about written material.
Right.
Okay. It does say and other objects.
Right.
And
suitably vague, right?
That part is vague, but what is obscenity?
Right.
You can't define it because it's ever changing. It depends on the morality of the society, which today is not what it is as of yesterday, right? So how do you even define it? There is no concrete way to put what obscene is. It says if it is something that depraves your morality. But what is there to measure that? There is literally nothing that says that toys are illegal. So if the only thing that you fall back on is obscenity, then it's, in my opinion, taking it too far, especially in light of the fact that privacy has been held to be a fundamental right. So, you have this one area of law which is moving towards making these things less taboo, such as saying that, yes, privacy is a fundamental right, striking down 377. And then, so they're saying on one hand, what you do in your bedroom is entirely your problem, except for when you have a sex toy.
Right.
That's not something we're going to allow. So it makes no sense. It contradicts its own growth in the direction that it's going in. So it literally makes no sense. The whole interpretation of the section itself is wrong, according to me, because the toy itself cannot be obscene, right? By that logic, banana should be banned. Because there's potential. There's potential.
Completely off topic and completely non-sexual. If you ask my wife, she will say yes.
But there is, so it's really vague and it has the whole industry untapped because of that.
How draconian is the implementation of this law, right? And let me contextualize this question further, right? As entrepreneurs in this space, are you afraid that your business might be taken away?
I feel like that inherently, I feel like any business person would be, because it's something that you've given everything to. So that apart, yes, most definitely. Because it's so vague, right? Like you can still play with bad law because then the lines are defined. You know what's where. You know this is something you can do, this is something you can't do. What do you do with something that's grey? Because that really depends on a person's interpretation then, isn't it? So while people sitting across from you can have conversations with about selling this, you try and having that same thing with customs and they will flip out and they will hold your goods and anything can be obscene according to them. Literally anything. Right. You have something that just looks straight and plain, and I'm going to go with the banana again, and they'll deem it to be obscene. And then that's it. It's stuck. It's gone. So it's that level of difficult because And it's not even phallic. If it's phallic, if it has an obscene picture on its cover, maybe I can sort of understand given the law. If it's just lying there, if it's just plain, not even phallic in nature, they will deem it to be obscene and just hold it.
Right.
And that's happened to us. It's happened that our stuff has gotten stuck, and I'm fairly certain that it's happened to other businesses in this industry as well. It's just a common problem that we all deal with. So yeah, the fear is definitely there.
And,
Oh, man.
and I think that's where our private labeling, the manufacturing stem from, that, the amount of losses that we will and are incurring from importing or getting it from somewhere else. Why don't we just create our own IPs here and start selling it here, so we don't have to deal with that, because we're putting in the same amount of effort, and this becomes like a proper Sangya design that we've designed. Like we are the only manufacturers of strap-ons in India, right? And that was designed entirely by Tanisha and I and Shweta, just sitting down and figuring out what would be the most comfortable for Desi bodies, and that's something that we wanted to do and circumvent the fact that we have to go to the customs officer and what he deems obscene or not.
Make in India to the rescue.
Yeah.
I want to wrap this section up by asking you, what would be favorable legal conditions specifically for this, right? And again, Make in India being, while I use it as a joke, it's a very real thing, right? We're pushing local manufacturing in everything. But what would you say would be a favorable legal framework, or what needs to change for it to be less of a risk?
I feel like that whole section needs to be struck down, because why is obscenity even an offense? But if you need to have it, then sure, if it is an obscene act, I understand. If someone is being obscene on the road, I understand. How do you take random objects and just arbitrarily deem them to be obscene in vacuum? Is not something that I can understand at all. It's not something that my brain, having studied law, can understand, because there's nothing else to it. But maybe defining what constitutes obscenity would help. Maybe saying that, yes, it pertains to written literature, because that's really my understanding of the section itself. And I could be wrong. That would help. That would help clarify something. But to use that as an umbrella term to just stuff in anything that you at the moment do not agree with is just plain arbitrary. So
that's the nature of this country at this point, right?
Yeah, it is.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. I want to take this conversation further into what is pretty much the last section. What next for you guys? Where do you go? You've evolved from a safe social space. You've got a sizable footprint now. I would say all publicity is good publicity. And I would put all of that in one bucket. So where do you guys go from here, right? What's the plan? What's your dad's plan for 2023?
If it was up to my dad, he would already have like 1,000 products on Sangya, but unfortunately we have to reel him in. So
ecosystem.
Have a proper ecosystem and grow organically like we have. We are expanding into what we feel could be tools that someone could use to explore their own sexuality. We're getting into kinkwear, some really nice kinkwear coming out. We want to make our lube a lot more accessible. We do feel our lube, we're evolving with the formula as well. So we've come up with a new formula now and new packaging. We're hoping that packaging and that lube can be in every single chemist store, accessible by the end of this year, hopefully by mid next year. It's a beautiful packaging. You should know. Nama is the one who's designed it. That's basically on our plan right now, because the sex toys are there, right? And they'll always be evolving. They're like the next iPhone. A new design will come out, design will come. But making sure that we're giving a wholesome and a whole 360-degree view of how we give people tools for their sexuality, which means clothes, which means even shoes, which means lubes, wipes, so many things that we want to do.
Yeah, the idea is to have a space where we cater to these needs. So if you need a toy, you need kinkware, you need wipes, you need lube. It's all there in one place. So that's the idea. That's what we're moving towards. Although at the moment, till now, we've had the toys and the lube so far. But that's what we're looking at for the next couple of years at least.
I
think,
love how wholesome it is. Tanisha, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think watching Sangya, at least content-wise, grow outside of the digital space is also something I'm very excited about. I remember we had this one article that came out, I think it was Times of India, and soon after that came out, the first few people that contacted us were people in the 45 to 60 age group. And that sinking in, I mean, that was just a whole other thing because I was so used to talking to people in their 20s and 30s that when that age group reached out to us and they made it very clear that they also want to make up for lost time and they have all these questions, that's when I realized how limiting it is for us to only be present on a digital platform. And I was just like, no, now we have to expand. So ideally for our content to have hard copies that more people can hold on to and read and interact with and sit with, even if they're not active on social media, that would be great.
Man, I mean, I know that's just the start. In my head, there is an Ayushmann Khurrana movie here. I'm totally. It's like, it has to happen. You have to make it happen. I'm just saying, putting it out there, the world manifesting, all that.
Please don't put it in my dad's head, man. He'll start trying
I'm sure he's thought about it. Are you kidding me?
You know it's right. You know it's right. You know it has. That's where it has to go, right? Great, man. It's been a pleasure having you guys on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so
for
much.
spending time. My last question, pretty much, right? And I think, I mean, while you run a brand yourself, I'm pretty sure that there are other brands as well who are doing some very wholesome work here, right? And again, I say wholesome because I don't think there are brands in India that are talking about wipes or lube or kinkware. Is in my head is a far more evolved need, but hygiene, right?
Correct.
What are some other brands in this space or without this space that you feel connected to, inspired by, are working with folks who deserve a shout out? I can take that silence as no one.
No, it's not that.
No, it's not
Alright.
that.
See, I'm going to be very
There's,
honest. There's
A
obviously...
lot of them are aggregators.
Yeah, like for example,
Yeah.
we work with I Am Besharam,
Right.
right? They're from what I understand, what they want to do is be the Amazon of sex toys, right? Make sure that it's one-stop shop for whatever it is, and they're the ones we've worked closely with.
Right.
There's a brand called Leather Subculture,
Right.
which basically makes leather kinkware. Right?
Really good stuff.
Really, really good stuff. Really high quality stuff. Again, a queer business. So they're doing really well. There's Salad Condoms.
Right.
A vegan, cruelty-free condom company run by a very, very bright person called Aruna. And so these are brands out there, right, which are trying to really, really push the boundaries of what they are, how they are, and bringing their lived experiences to the brand, which is why I really, really like them, especially Leather and Salad and other small companies coming up. There are other brands which are doing great stuff. Unfortunately, they do become our competitors at some point or the other. Though it's a very small community, right? I swear I don't think I can count more than 10 companies which are there in the space, big and small. Like I Am Besharam is one of the first ones to be there, right? To the ones which are still around, probably on my fingers, and only 10 of us, right? So though right now we don't feel like competition because the pie is really big, I know somewhere down the line it's going to, and how we're growing is really going to define who we are and how we are in that particular pie.
Love it. Love it. My last question before we wrap this up is, can you share one tip each for my listeners to have a happier sexual life?
Transparency. I mean, I know it's a little difficult to, I know was for me, to sort of be in bed and be vulnerable enough to say that touch me like this instead of touching me like that. And I know for a fact that for me, it took a very long time to take that step. But then when I did, that was everything, because not only did that change the way I was being touched and felt, it also defined how safe I felt.
Right.
Because I wouldn't say those I wouldn't let myself feel that level of vulnerability if I didn't feel that safety.
Right.
So, I mean, they came together. And because I did, everything then suddenly got better, because then I knew there was this space to sort of say, oh no, maybe not this, but how about that?
Sure.
Instead of just sort of dismissing it completely.
Right.
So that's been a game changer for me.
So, sex is a dialogue.
Yeah, always, always.
Love it.
And there's absolutely no shame in asking for what you like.
Love it. Fantastic. Ashish?
Well, my one tip would be always use lube, and that doesn't mean when you're only with your partners. It also means, trust me, if you're
It's a
listening to
game
this, it's a
changer.
game changer if you're alone as well. No matter what gender you identify as, using lube doesn't have to be ours. Trust me, this is just going to change the way you perceive masturbation, mutual masturbation, and sex. Lube up. Not all bodies can produce, or be the way it needs to be. And it's always great to have tools, whether it's sex toys, whether it's lube. But the one tip that I would always give is to lube up.
Love it. Lube and sunscreen. Tanisha, to round this off.
I'd say just be patient with yourself, because I think the one thing I've realized from my own life experience is that every year there's something new that comes up. Every year my body says something else, or my mind says something else. And whatever I thought my identity was or my preferences were just continuously evolve into something else. And I have to stay patient with that process to figure out where my mind is trying to take me and what it's trying to tell me about what I like and what I don't like. So be nice to yourself as you continue changing, as you figure out that maybe you are queer or you're not queer or you're non-binary or not non-binary. Whatever comes up, just let it come up and take the time it needs to get where you need to get.
Love it. All fantastic. So glad you guys could make this. This was a great conversation.
This was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad. That's it on this episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. Before we go, please follow the Sangya Project at the Sangya Project.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
At Sangya Project.
Sorry, do that again. Before we go, please follow the Sangya Project at Sangya Project. Go to Sangya again. No.
Somebody hit the mic.
My bad, sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna let you do it.
Please.
Why?
Just do it. It's okay.
No, you do it. Okay, I'll do it. All right. Before we go, please don't forget to follow the Sangya Project at Sangya Project on Instagram and Twitter.
No, only just
Twitter would give us a lot of hate.
just Instagram and the website.
Okay, cool. So, before we go, this time for real. Before we go, please follow the Sangya Project at Sangya Project or go to the website www.sangyaproject.com. If you like this episode, give us a shout. Let us know at IVM Podcast, or you can write to me at Ashcharya Fuck It. That's ASHCHARYA Fuck It. That's it. This was our episode. Come back next week for another conversation with a storyteller or a story seller. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to Aparna, aka Rogstream, and Kangana, aka Mystic Ignite, two of India's most popular gaming streamers who are taking over the internet. The conversation takes us through their growth journeys as female gamers and how they overcame trolling. On Smarter with Sid talks about the new Netflix documentary on Kanye West, Genius. Sid also talks about the hustle that Kanye went through and tells us about 3 things that we can learn from him. On the Musafir Stories podcast, we have a returning guest, Anirudh Kanisetti. He discusses Elora and his debut book, Lords of the Deccan. Congratulations so much to Anirudh. Anirudh's been a podcaster with us for numerous years. We're so happy for him. This is a great book. You should definitely check it out. Do check out Anirudh's show as well, Echoes of India, and he's done another show called Yuddha. And on Cock and Bull, Cyrus is joined by comedians Naveen Narona and Shreyas Manohar. They discuss the new Commissioner of Mumbai and his announcements. They talk about the new rules for passport verification and how China has announced a lockdown again. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform that you might be listening to us. You can also check us out on YouTube. We have a webpage, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where a list of all our channels are. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, India Water Portal, and Max Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
If you're a cricket fan, check out Edges and Sledges, India's favorite cricket podcast.
The podcast focuses on Indian cricket, the IPL, and has a ton of banter both on and off the field.
We talk about the week's biggest cricket stories with current and ex-international cricketers, coaches, or sometimes just between us.
And it's hosted by me, DJ.
Me, Varun.
And me, Ashwin.
New episodes release every week.
You can catch us on the IVM Podcast's website, app,
or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.